I know that the first thing that you guys are aware of Trigger is her meat flopping all over the place that violate at least 5 different laws of motion, and you guys are gooning over it. But me, as somebody who has been to some real war, I've fought in the bloodiest conflict known to mankind. The Reddit battles, the Twitter war, the Facebook comment section, and as an ex-military who have set foot on these digital battleground, I see something different. That isn't just jiggle physics, it's the next gen recoil compensation to counteract the recoil of a sniper. Not only that Trigger revolutionized the sniping, she redefined the future of marksmanship. Trigger is the next Astra, but instead of holding a mic, she holds a sniper rifle that could cut down a tree. She is highly speculated in the CN side and the JP side that she's gonna be as powerful as Astra, or at least very close behind her. But before we dive into the reason behind it, let's talk a little bit about Nicole, which is one of the strongest A-rank support in the entire game. So you see, every time Nicole releasing this orb, whether with ultimate chain attack or EX special, it's gonna give 40% defense shred to the enemy with a downtime of really short duration, which is 3.5 seconds after the last hit. So that's why you see a lot of runs with Nicole. Nicole would be swapping in and out with the DPS even during the stun window. Even though swapping in and out took a lot of effort to manage, the animation in itself would also take away the time for DPSing. And yet this is totally worth it for how powerful her kit is. But what if I tell you that you don't need to do all these swapping in and out to get a 35% defense shred? And that's basically one of the Trigger's core mechanics. You're basically having Nicole's skill on the enemy all the time, but with 35%. And we haven't get into her capability of dealing damage and applying daze yet. And if we compare her with Astra side by side, all she gives is a flat percentage, 35%. And Astra would be giving a flat 1200 attacks, which would give about 40% improvement if your DPS has 3000 attacks. And the other numbers is the critical damage, which would actually give about 10 to 18% improvement. Depends on how high your critical damage is. What I want to say is that the stat that Astra give are very saturatable. So the better your DPS is built, the less benefit they are gonna get from the Astra. And just a side note, usually the anomaly agent like Bernice, Jane Doe, and Yanagi would have relatively low attacks, so they would benefit a lot more from Astra, even though they couldn't benefit much from the critical damage. And that's why Astra on anomaly team is so powerful. But the counterpart Trigger, no matter how good your DPS build or how bad your DPS build, the benefit you get from Trigger stays the same. And with massive amount of buff in the game mode like Deadly Assault, like the left one would give 40% critical damage and the right one would give 30% attacks, those are stats that would saturate Astra's buff. But when you are using Trigger along with these kind of buff, her impacts remain unaffected, and whether Trigger is going to perform at the Astra level is determined with how good she would apply the daze and the amount of DPS that she could dish out. I guess we'll just wait it out. Now let's get into her basic and kit. So what you want to do with Trigger is basically hold attacks until the bar up here is filled up, and you only need 4 shots to reach 100% of it, and the last shot doesn't count. So if you release it on the third shot, you would only get to 75% of it, and if you're shooting nothing, you're gonna get nothing. You're not gonna charge up the bar like what you could do with Lucy and Astra could. And what this bar is doing is that it's gonna be the resources of the off-field DPS and daze. It takes so little resource, you almost don't have to worry about running out of it, because it's gonna take about more than 1 minute to use all of it. And the fire has the cooldown time of 3 seconds, so you would only see her once in content like Shiyu defense, unless you use her out to finish off the enemy or something. I just realized that I've been slapping on his ass for the whole time in the name of science. So the game plan is that you fire 4 shots, then you forget, and keep dealing damage with DPS. And unlike Bernice, as long as the bar up there isn't empty, the shot would apply to any target by anyone hitting the target. So you don't need to bring up trigger again when you're facing new waves of enemy. The state during the hold attack is called sniper stance, and if you get attacked during the sniper stance, it would auto dodge the enemy once, and it has a cooldown time of 8 seconds. So you don't have to worry about getting hit at the start of the fight. So you could see I got hit here, and after 8 seconds, I got my dodge back. And you could also move actively when you are in sniper stance. You could move left and right and back, but you can't move forward. And moving in sniper stance count as dodge. And yeah, the way she moves herself looks really stylish. They put a lot of work into the animation, man. And when any of your agent use EX special, Trigger would fire a powerful shot. And you can see this huge ass text of fire in the middle of the screen to know that the shot is being fired, obviously. And it would also works on parry, and it would also works with ultimate. But it has this condition is that the powerful shot is only available for every 20 seconds. So as you can see here, I use skill 2 times and it fired 2 shots, but when I use the skill here, it doesn't activate it. Her skill is pretty simple, it does some days, but the animation does looks really long, but you could swap cancel really early. Even though it has quick assist at the end of animation, I don't think it's worth it unless you are using Astro Voice. And you will see the bar up there turn yellow. It's the coordinate support state, and the TLDR of this state is that it gives more days and damage. So what it actually does is that Trigger gonna shot quicker. She could shot 4 shots in 3 seconds from originally 1 shot per 3 seconds, giving a burst of DPS and days. You could also use her skill twice to stack for 8 shots, so you don't need to worry about using it as soon as you have it. And by the way, the ultimate would give you 6 shots, so one of the more ideal way to use it is to use ultimate then skill to get 10 shots, and you can't stack the shot above that. The damage from ultimate is respectable, but not as good as the DPS. And I think unless you're trying to finish off the enemy, you wanna use it outside of the stun window to get all the days. It got 20 days after the ult, and maybe about roughly 30 days if we also takes the coordinate support into account. And if we compare with Qingyi's ultimate, it should be able to give roughly the same amount of days as Qingyi's ult after you max out Trigger skill, because my Qingyi is fully built. And let's get into how her multiplier works. Holding basic wouldn't apply any multiplier, but I could hold it all days as a spotter and spotting her beautiful movement. That is gorgeous, man. Additional attacks is the only way that would apply the multiplier on the enemy. Like let's say if I hit this mob with Qingyi, now Trigger fire the shot, the multiplier is on. So it is applied split seconds after you hit it. And what's so important about this is that as long as your bar isn't empty, I could still reapply it when I'm hitting the new waves of mobs. Even though the description said it only lasts 5 seconds, but it actually feels like eternity, because as long as you are fighting the mob actively, it would be there all the time. And when I stun the enemy, the multiplier will be added on top of the base multiplier, which is 150. Let's pretend that it's 185 because this Trigger core levels isn't maxed out. And it could also stack with other stunners breaks multiplier. So as you can see here with Qingyi, I could get up to 265. The amounts of numbers is absolutely insane. Aside from the attackers team as I listed here, you could pair with any support and it would work just fine. And since she's an outfield stunner, so double stunner is not a meme build with the Trigger. I would test some of the highly disgusted one and find out. And it seems like at this point, Trigger doesn't really need Anbi as much as Anbi need Trigger, because the amounts of days and the multiplier that she offers is already very close behind to Astra. And I think we could anticipate this anomaly stunner team, like Trigger with Yanagi or Trigger with Grace, and then you just randomly put an anomaly agent and it would work perfectly fine. And the only reason that Trigger could only works with Grace and Yanagi is that her additional ability said it only works with attackers and the agent with the same attribute. Like and sub if you find it useful, and see ya guys.